Hey everyone, this is Gabbi.
And Karim.
And you're listening to the Making of an Incredible MD podcast by Allied to Health.
Tune in each week to hear us talk about the journey of getting into med school.
From GAMSAT to medical interviews, get the insider scoop from med students who have done it all before. So stay tuned and get ready to get med ready.
Yeah, so the task or explain station is essentially a station where you're actually asked to do something. You're asked to perform a task, explain something to someone, and they're a very important part of the medical interview because they really tell the examiner something about yourself as a person, about the way that you perform, about the way that you complete tasks. So there's a few different ways in which tasks or explain stations can be presented in a medical interview. Some of the key types are a detech station, where you're asked to detechnologize a scientific word and explain it to someone in sort of simple language.
So you basically get a list of hard words, usually scientific words, but I think it could be other words as well. And you have to explain them as if you're either, explaining to someone at high school level, I'd say, maybe like year 10 level, and in lay language.
Yep, exactly right. Another way that these stations can be presented is to give directions. So, like even literally to give directions to someone on a map, or simple steps or instructions for someone to follow so that they can complete a task. That's one example. And then another example is to perform a task or follow instructions. So, for example, you could be given a diagram that you have to copy, or someone's going to give you instructions on how to draw a diagram, or you're going to be presented with a graph and you'll have to explain the graph to someone else. So there's a few other different ways in which the task station can be presented, but those are the main ones.
Yeah. So basically you could be doing the task or you could be explaining to someone how to perform a task.
Yeah. They'll ask you to do something.
Yeah, exactly. And sort of the reason why they have these types of stations is because they can really see how you perform under pressure when you actually have to do something. They're testing, your problem solving skills, maybe even, deductive reasoning skills as well in some cases, and getting to know your communication skills as well, particularly if there's someone else in the room that you have to explain something to, and work with someone with in like a sort of like a mini team environment as well. They can really see firsthand.
Sort of similar to the acting station, very much trying to see how you communicate with others, if you show empathy with others, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And how you sort of react to things as well as like reflecting on them as well and planning to improve in the future. So often in these stations, there's time at the end for you to reflect on your performance, and how what you did well and what you wish to improve in the future. So they're looking at testing that as well to make sure that you can learn from your actions.
Yeah, exactly. Are you the sort of person who will just say, oh, no, I did pretty well, happy to move on? Or are you the sort of person who will say, oh, I think I did all right, but here are the things I could change or improve in the future? That's essentially sort of what they're looking for. It's a really important quality in a doctor, I think, as someone who can sort of reflect, and that's a big part of why they do that in the task or explain stations.
And in terms of like how to approach these stations or the structure, it's really difficult to explain. But I think the key thing for all of these stations is having a solid intro or setup. Like take a deep breath before you begin and figure out what's the best way to start. But let's break it down into the two sort of main ones we're thinking you may get. So with a detech station first. So Karim's sort of the expert of this one. So we might run through an example first. Karim will explain a word to me, and it'll just be a short example. You'll usually get more time. You usually probably have to explain more than one word as well. But we'll just do one word. And then we'll talk through the things that he was trying to achieve in that situation.
So the setup here is, let's pretend you've been given a list of 5 questions.
5 words.
5 words. And you've got 5 minutes to explain 2 of those words or 3 of those words, whatever it might be. And so you get the list, and you've got 5 minutes to think about and then try to explain in high school language that specific word, right? So the example that we're going to use today is nucleus. So that's the word I've been given. So I'd first introduce myself. Hi, Gabby. My name's Karim. I've been asked to explain the word nucleus to you. I could start off by asking, can you tell me a bit about this word, or what do you know about this word? It depends on where you're taking this sort of interview. But if you were asked to explain it yourself, you might start off by saying, okay, well, a nucleus, there are lots of different types. I'm going to explain to you a nucleus in chemistry. So in chemistry, the nucleus forms part of an atom. Now, atoms are when we zoom into something, as small as we can. So the smallest things that make up an object are atoms. And atoms are made up of 3 parts: the protons, neutrons, and electrons. So those parts sit in different parts of the atom, the protons, neutrons, and electrons. But the protons and neutrons sit in the nucleus, which sort of forms like the core of the atom. So if you think of an atom like an apple, the apple has, skin on the outside, has a core in the middle. The core is essentially what the nucleus is. So in chemistry, the nucleus forms the core of the apple, which essentially is the core of an atom. And so that's where I would stop. Maybe ask the examiner, do you have any questions, anything like that, and get some feedback. Even say, can you explain that back to me potentially?
Yeah, with that, so that was really good. He broke it down. So what Karim was aiming to do there was to use an analogy or a metaphor to sort of explain a scientific concept or a scientific word. And he was picking his language wisely as well. The only feedback there is maybe need to explain atom a little bit more, maybe. I think proton, electrons, and neutrons don't really need to be explained because they're just sort of things that are within this atom. But yeah, maybe breaking that down a little bit more. And he did choose his words wisely, and he took a slow pace, but not too slow that it was sort of condescending, but slow enough so that the examiner could take in everything that he was saying, and can think about it in their mind, in each step.
And also just like repeating things enough times so it makes sense as well.
And asking questions at the end, I think, is really good. Like asking if they have any questions. Sometimes you might ask them to teach back to you. So can you explain back to me what I taught you? Yeah. And sometimes examiners won't because they'll be told not to do that. They'll be
told not to, yeah.
So you can try it. I mean, if you say it and they don't teach back to you, then I'm sure it's fine. But maybe it's safer just asking, do you have any questions for me?
I think just keeping it general. It's really hard to say what they actually want in a station like this. We don't want to tell you exactly what to say. These are just some recommendations. But yeah, just keeping it general. Do you have any questions? Moving on.
Because in the real life situation, ideally you would like them to teach back to you. But I think under the timed conditions, it just makes it a little bit harder. So that's probably why they won't.
And it also depends on why you're trying to teach someone. Are you trying to teach for the sake of just their understanding, or because they have to really learn this concept? If they need to learn this concept, then maybe get them to teach back. But if they just need to understand the general idea, just explaining might be good enough, and asking if they have some questions.
Yeah, exactly. But that was an example, so I hope you all learnt from that and found that useful. But in terms of another station and how you might like to structure it, so if you have to give instructions to someone, again, could be, instructions on a map, could be instructions on how to complete a task. The general structure that we think will be useful is to start simple and keep it simple. Break things down and add complexity as you go along.
Yeah, so if the thing you're asked to do or the instructions you're asked to give are actually really complex, think about what it would be like hearing that instructions. You want to go slow. You want to make sure they understand. So you want to break things down. If they're complex instructions, you want to give things in small steps so they have plenty of time to follow. And then probably the most important part of the station is actually getting feedback from them.
Yeah.
If you're allowed to talk to them, you might not be allowed to talk to them. But if you can ask them for feedback or ask how they're going or ask if they have any questions, so you can clarify things, that shows really good communication. And that's sort of the whole point of this station, really.
And even saying like, am I going at a good pace? Is this pace suiting you? Is this language suitable for you? And that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's sort of the main approach or structure for these stations. In summary, take it slow.
Break it down.
Exactly.
Know your end goal as well, and take your time getting there. And just, you're talking to a regular person, put yourself in the actual situation and, use those teamwork and communication skills.
Yeah, and have fun.
Yeah, they are usually a fun station, I would say. So in terms of do's and don'ts, we always do this. So the do's, stay calm, take it slow, break things down into small, bite-sized chunks, and check in with your teammate if you have one, get feedback and give feedback along the way.
Yeah, and then in terms of the don'ts, just try not to go down a rabbit hole explaining stuff, especially with a detechnalized station. If you're asked to explain a word and you're finding the word really, really difficult to explain, just stop, take a breath, just say, look, I just need a moment to think, and then reapproach the problem and try to think about a different way that you can sort of explain the word, but don't ramble on. And if you're finding it too difficult, just move on to the next word, or just end it there. And for a lot of these stations, don't use jargon. Assume like a high school level of knowledge. Try to keep things fairly simple. Think about scientific communication. Things are kept fairly simple. And finally, definitely try not to get frustrated. Often these stations can be quite frustrating because you don't know how to explain the word, or you don't know how to explain the task in the best way possible. And communication obviously can get frustrating when if someone doesn't get what you're trying to say, or you don't get what they're trying to say, and there's a bit of breakdown of communication. So just take a deep breath when that happens. Don't get frustrated. Make sure that you're doing everything that we said to do. Stay calm, take it slow, take a breath.
Yeah, absolutely. And something we should mention as well is sometimes they have like pieces of papers and pens or a whiteboard and markers available to you to use, especially in the detechnalized stations. Don't be afraid to use it. Some things are so much easier to explain if you can draw them out. Don't be afraid to use those resources. It might take a little bit extra time, but it'll probably be worth it if you can give the examiner a visual aid to sort of be paired with your explanation as well. Yeah. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end of this episode. Would you say, Karim?
Yep, short and sweet.
Short and sweet.
Just like your explanations in the task station.
Exactly. So as we bring this to a close, make sure you keep an eye out on all of our episodes. We have more mock MMI stations with real students and real examiners from our Halad mock exams. They're a really good resource to see how other people respond to a station, but also to see the feedback that our examiners give the students. I think it's invaluable, and they're free, so use them. And make sure you sign up to our mock exams as well. They're happening every weekend of September, so check out our Halad website and you can sign up there. But as always, if you have any questions, don't be afraid to send us an email.
All right, thanks everyone. Thanks for listening to our episode, and we'll see you next time.
Bye. Thank you for listening to the Making of an Incredible MD podcast by Halad to Health. Please like, share, and subscribe to help spread the word about our podcast. And we'd love to hear your feedback. So send us an email or message on Facebook. All of our links are in the show notes. Thanks. We'll see you next time.